Hello students, so today we shall do Nissim Ezekiel's The Truth About the Floods. Nissim Ezekiel is known as one of the big three of Indian English poetry, the other two being Kamala Das and A.K. Ramanujan. Ezekiel has enriched and established Indian English poetry through his modernist innovation and techniques. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy Award for Latter-day Psalms and the Padma Shri in 1988. He has been called the father of modern Indian English poetry by many critics. Nissim Ezekiel belongs to a Beni Israeli sect, but born and brought up in India, he has an outsider, objective perspective on certain things. His collections of poems include The Unfinished Man, Time to Change, 60 poems, the exact name and Hymns in Darkness. His poetry exposes the follies and foibles of Indianness, their superstitions, irrational thinking, their English, their belief of being spiritually enlightened, and also various establishments. You can find the recurring theme of the quest for the self exploration. You quite often experience a sense of alienation in his poetry that is quite often the result of a hyphenated identity. Ezekiel also makes the abstract concrete through his suggestive symbols. His poetry is replete with wit and irony. You can also find a kind of conversational ease in his poetry. He employs the technique of memorialization where he uses memory as a device to bring up the past again and again. You can also find the skeptical point of view in his poetry. The Truth About the Floods. Now, The Truth About the Floods is a poem based on a report in the Indian Express in September 25, 1967 by V.K. Dikshit. Being a Jew, Nissim Ezekiel is perceived as an outsider, though he expresses his national identity honestly. India is simply my environment. A man can do something for and in an environment by being fully what he is, not by withdrawing from it. This was Nissim Ezekiel's statement. He says, I have not withdrawn from India. Though his being a Jew made him look at his own things objectively and laugh at the follies and foibles of his Indian fellow men. This poem portrays the picture of a post-flood scenario where the afflicted people neither get genuine help from student relief workers nor from government officials. So the poet takes a jibe at the administrative system in India. This is how the poem begins. For a visitor to the flood affected areas of Balasore, Mayurbhanj, and Cuttack in North Bihar and Odisha, it is a job to get at the truth. Meet any official. He will claim his district, subdivision, or block is the worst hit and pass on a handout with statistics of relief work. The poet begins by saying that for a visitor to the flood affected areas of Balasore, Mayurbhanj, and Cuttack in North Bihar and Odisha, it is his primary obligation or primary duty to arrive at the truth. For the official in charge, he would survey the damage and without going into the intricacies or without properly looking at the details, he would sum it up as worst hit. And this is done in order to extract maximum funds that hardly reach the victims of the flood. Thus, you can find that the whole tragedy is condensed to a handout. That is a superficial piece of statistics where even the statistics is not the truth. Coming to the next stanza. The village of Mandaspur, 9 miles from Balasore district, the granary of Odisha. Early morning, after 8 days of flood, paddy fields with knee-deep water. A villager speaks, I have 11 children. 2 I have left to the mercy of God. The rest are begging somewhere. I went to the village to find out the truth. All the houses had collapsed. The village of Mandaspur, the granary of Odisha, the very source of their subsistence, is knee deep in water. Knee deep is also an idiomatic usage for being involved in a very difficult situation. The expression obliquely refers to the people of Mandaspur who are knee deep in trouble because their very source of livelihood or income is at stake. A villager echoes the poignancy of the situation when he says, I have 11 children, 2 who I have left to the mercy of God, and the rest seem to be begging somewhere. The speaker was in quest of the truth. Many houses had collapsed, and many had been washed away. The men, women, and children were silent. They gazed at the sky. Men, women, and children were roofless because they were now homeless. They were roofless and could just gaze at the sky aimlessly, probably trying to trace their destinies. Though the speaker says that the villagers would only open up once they were convinced that he was not a government official. So the villagers would not tell me anything until I convinced them that I wasn't a government official. And these lines function as the refrain of the poem. And it is a major example of irony because irony is a situation where there is incongruity between what is expected and what we get. So, in this particular situation, also, we expect them to open up to a government official. But, contrary to our expectations, they do not open up. They are ready to open up as long as it is not a government official. And then the villagers gradually open up. They go on to narrate their predicament, their story. They say the floods were sudden. The entire village was asleep. We heard a roaring sound and we were engulfed. We took shelter on tree tops. A relief party came at last. 5 students with a transistor, a tin of biscuits, and a camera. The villagers ran to them. They slapped their bellies and whined, I have not eaten for 3 days. My husband has been washed away. My parents have abandoned me. My daughter is dying. I cannot find my daughter. So, as the villagers open up, they reveal that they had heard a roaring sound and they were scared and they took shelter on treetops, and that reveals how vulnerable they were. And finally, they found that a relief party at last came. And who was this relief party? It consisted of 5 students with a transistor, a tin of biscuits, and a camera. And you can find, in spite of them being students, the villagers run to them in sheer desperation. They slap their bellies and reveal their grief out of being deprived of their livelihoods. They complain they have not eaten for 3 days, of the husband being washed away, of the parents having abandoned someone, of the daughter dying. You can see that these different responses can be perceived from different positions. One from a position of a spouse, one from a position of a parent, one from a position of being a child. So as they distribute the biscuits, they say, don't make a noise, said the students. Sit down in a circle. The villagers sat down in a circle. They did not say another word. The transistor was on. The biscuits were distributed. The camera clicked. And then the students left, humming the tune of a popular Hindi song. So you can find that as they distribute the biscuits and click photos for publicity, they ask the villagers to sit in a circle and not make noise. In other words, they are limiting the villagers to their domain and not allowing them to express themselves. While ironically, why have they come there? They have actually come there to hear them, and yet they do not allow them to express themselves. They just want to make a show of their philanthropic pursuits, and they want to actually feed on the tragedy of the villagers. So, this also points to a kind of narcissistic tendency found in current social media, also. And this their careless attitude you can see is revealed in how they leave casually humming the tune of a Hindi film song. And then the speaker says, I moved on. And finally, as he moves on, he arrived at a swollen tributary. The boatman wouldn't ferry me across till I told him I wasn't a government official. So you can find that the tributary here becomes a metaphor of the whole flood situation, a condensed metaphor of the whole flood situation, where the poet would be apprised or informed only after the people were convinced that he was not a government official. And then he arrived at Arda, but the villagers wouldn't talk to him. But the villagers wouldn't talk to me till I told them I wasn't a government official. At Badapal, I heard the children wail with hunger. An atmosphere of despair pervaded the village. I asked the men to help me organize relief, but they turned their backs on me till I told them I wasn't a government official. As he arrives at Arda, the villagers would not talk to him until he told them he wasn't a government official. You can see that the gap between the refrains become lesser and lesser as the poem progresses, implying that as people traveled over time and space, their belief in government officials started dwindling or decreasing, particularly as the floods now had become an annual phenomenon. And again, at Badapal, the poet heard the wails of hunger from children, and the poet asked the men to help him with the relief work. The men here refuse to help with the relief work again until they are convinced that he wasn't a government official. So, this fact proves that their hatred for the government official proves to be greater than the hunger of their own children. And finally, the district authorities at Barasor admitted they had failed, but they claimed they could not have done better. Nature, they said, had conspired against them. Write the truth, they said in your report. And so I did. The district authorities at Balasore had admitted that they had failed and they could not have done better. They say that nature had conspired against them. So you can see that quite often, Ezekiel makes use of pun as a source of irony. Yeah. Here also he says that the officials said that nature had conspired against them. So, nature functions as a pun here. It can also refer to the external nature and also to their internal human nature that had conspired against them. Write the truth, they said in their report. And the poet says, the speaker rather says, so I did. So, the poem ends on this note, where statistics of facts, stand as the ultimate truth. because statistics or facts can actually be empirically verified. But in a post truth era where we live right now, even statistics is diluted. Okay, students, so that's all for today. Thank you.